Hello and good afternoon. Welcome back to the AfriCanadian Resource Center. Tonight, like every night, we're bringing you different leaders in the community. And today we're speaking specifically to a member of the Zimbabwean Canadian community. And we're going to talk about a lot of things that deals with the energy, dealing with knowing your purpose and really taking advantage of this turmoil, this pandemic, to focus, to know what is it that you're doing in the community, but what is it you're doing in your life specifically. So that guest is going to be joining us shortly. But in the meantime, I wanted to introduce you to our community, the Zimbabwean Canadian community. The Zimbabwean Canadian community in Canada stands over 11,000 people spreading across the landmass. About 60% of all Zimbabweans live in Ontario, with around 10 to 14% living in Alberta and British Columbia, as well as Quebec. While their immigration started in 1980, most Zimbabweans have come to Canada at the turn of the century. This is during the continuing crisis facing their homeland. About half of all Zimbabweans in Canada came as refugees, and another 13% of them are highly skilled workers. And this, for the Zimbabwean community, has caused an issue because from what we are learning through the statistics, it says that they are highly skilled group, which is about 30% of Zimbabweans say that they do the work that they do, but they are overqualified, they are overskilled for. In terms of remittance, 2/3 of the diaspora in Canada sent money back home to Zimbabwe, and one of the highest level of the groups in Canada. All remittance worldwide contribute about 80% of the Zimbabwean GDP. That's incredible. So this is for all of the diaspora members who send money back home. 8% of the Zimbabwe's GDP. That's high. And they say that through groups like the Zimbabwean Cultural Society of Alberta and the Zimbabwean Canada Association, the community has been active in protesting alongside the Zimbabwean back home. So basically, if you look at what we're looking at, and this is not specific for Zimbabwe, by the way. When you look at some of the members of the Canadian community who are from Africa, majority of them, some come in here as doctors, some come here as professors. And if you look, a lot of them end up doing tax work or the work that usually is reserved for people who are not educated. So this is a challenge for many Africans in diaspora. One of the reasons why we continue to cover different communities is because we want to understand what are the challenges that these communities are facing, but also know the realities in these communities. So we wanted to start with that. We wanted to start with an introduction to the Zimbabwean community and to know more about what, in terms of numbers. Of course, we're going to continue to get more resources so we have a better understanding. But overall, you can see that these numbers are high in terms of the skilled workers. And of course, a lot of the Zimbabweans are very highly educated, similar to Nigeria. And the question is, how do we get these individuals to actually compete for the same positions here in Canada on an equal playing field? Anyway, so that's a bit of the introduction to the Zimbabwean community. Let's go to the rest of our program.
A message from the Government of Canada.
All right, so as we do every night, we wanted to bring you more news as we always do. And tonight, we are focusing again on the Nigerian protests that have been taking place over the last few days and weeks. And of course, yesterday we spoke to one of the members of the Nigerian community here in Toronto. And we wanted to follow up. We're going to continue to follow up on this until we have a resolution as to what's going on there. What we learned today is that routing gangs stormed through parts of Nigeria's largest city Thursday, spreading violence for a second day in Lagos in the wake of the 2 weeks of peaceful protests against the police brutality. They are saying that plumes of smoke rose from prison where gunfire could be heard, and a resident of the neighborhood where the Ikoyi Correctional Center is located said that he had a gunshot as soldiers and police officers put down what appeared to be an attempt jailbreak. Anyway, so they're saying also today we saw, if you're following this, the Nigerian president finally spoke to the nation about the unrest that has gripped the nation. And in recent days, we have been waiting for the Nigerian president to actually speak about it, but without mentioning the shootings of the peaceful protesters at the Lekki Toll Plaza on Tuesday. Obviously, the president addressed the issue, but he may be, based on what I've heard, based on what we had yesterday from the conversation, he did not talk about the shooting, obviously, and fatalities that allegedly took place there. So that's something that we would wait to see, maybe speak to somebody tomorrow from that community once again to see if they are satisfied with what the president of Nigeria has spoken about today. So that's a bit of, we just wanted to follow up on that, and we would catch you up on what happens tomorrow as well.
I am indeed deeply pained that innocent lives have been lost. These tragedies are uncalled for and unnecessary. Certainly, there is no way whatsoever to connect these bad acts to legitimate expression of grievance of the youth of our country. Our neighbors in particular, and members of the international community, many of whom have expressed concern about the ongoing development in Nigeria, we thank you and urge you all to seek to know all the facts available.
Again, as we do every night, tonight we want to give you a bit of update on COVID-19 here in Canada. As we learned that Canada reported 2,668 new cases of COVID-19, which is setting a new record, of a daily new record. And of course, I feel like every night we're bringing you bad news. We hope to turn that corner. But it seems like we're definitely, last week I was talking about us being in the middle of the storm. We're definitely in it, and we don't know how long it's going to be, but definitely this is a new record for a daily high. And we're also learning that there's limitations as to where we can travel. For example, Canadians, we learned today that they cannot travel to Europe. This is something we want to follow up on. Obviously, this is for the Europeans. Maybe they have made the decisions to control what's going on there. But again, this is a concern, but it's also to look at what we're going through and figure out how do we really, what's the new normal anymore. In Ontario, the reporting is now at 841 cases of COVID-19 deaths. That's the total number. And Toronto's positivity rate of COVID tests hit 4.4%. Last week, and is now nearly double the high alert threshold previously cited by the province. So again, whether it's in Canada or Ontario, the numbers are not looking good. I wanted to switch up a little bit and go back to the continent and talk about what's going on in Sudan, where we learned that 2 people have been killed, at least a dozen more injured as security forces crack down on protesters in Sudan's capital. Officials say this Thursday. They say that people took to the streets of Khartoum a day earlier to protest against the worsening state of the economy and poor living conditions. Obviously, this is the same thing that we are looking at across the continent. Because again, COVID has stopped everything that used to help, because a lot of people in Africa survive on their daily wages or their daily earnings. So if you're not able to go out to earn something, means your life is really hanging into, like, there's no way for you to survive. And I think that is frustrating a lot of people. And it's also causing them to also remember and awaken what has been a sleeping beast, which is the socioeconomic status of many people in Africa. So Khartoum is also another country that's going through this protest that has been going on throughout Africa. Obviously, we've been talking about Nigeria. We know about Namibia. There is a lot of other stories that we hope to bring you. And this is important for us as African Canadians. It is important to know because many of us, not many of us, almost all of us have members in Africa. So we are affected, whether it's mentally, whether it's in many other ways. We talked about the Zimbabwean community where a lot of them send a lot of money back home. So we are affected no matter how you put it. And so we want to make sure that we bring you details and information, news of our communities across the continent as much as we do here in Canada. They are saying that police and security forces fired tear gases and locked down the capital after blocking the main roads and streets leading up to the presidential palace and armed headquarters. And the army headquarters, obviously. So this is bigger in terms of if the authorities are taking these measures. It's something that is concerning for all of us. And then, of course, knowing the challenges Sudan, specifically South Sudan, have been going through. This is obviously the North Sudan, but the challenges that Sudan have gone through over the last few years, if not decades, we really have to be concerned for that community. Because they need a break. I would say all of us need a break as Africans, but specifically the Sudanese community. So let's hope that this ends so we can go back to actually building our communities. Anyways, that's all for the news. Coming up, we're going to bring you our story with Dr. Ntabo.
A coronavirus is a type of virus that can infect the respiratory tract, meaning the nose, mouth, throat, sinuses, or lungs. There are many types of coronaviruses, and most cause only mild illness, such as the common cold. But some coronaviruses can cause severe illness. The most likely way people can become infected is by droplets that contain the virus. These droplets carry the virus into the air and can enter through the nose, mouth, throat, and lungs of a person who is within 6 feet or 2 meters. The virus infects the lungs, causing the lungs to become inflamed. The alveolar sacs have to be healthy for the body to breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. Infection of the virus causes damage to the cells of the lungs and triggers an inflammatory reaction. Fever may develop. With severe inflammation, inflammatory fluid fills the lungs. This reduces the function of the alveoli, resulting in coughing and difficulty breathing. The oxygen level in the blood may decrease. In some people who become severely ill, other organs may be affected, such as the kidneys or the heart.
Imagine a 14-year-old girl, after having lost her mother, the woman she treasured the most, the woman who was essential for her process of becoming. In the midst of that pain and loss, a promise was born, a promise to be a doctor. Through the heart and soul of a 14-year-old, these were her words: "Mama, I'm hopeful. I'll fulfill my ambition. I'll try by all means, and I'll strive to be a doctor." This is a video of myself when I was 14 years old, when I made a promise to my mother to be a doctor.
Temba, look, I will fulfill my ambition. I will try by all means, and I will strive to be a doctor, Mama.
Not knowing what the world had in store for her, that young girl believed in the beauty of her dreams. That must have been the innocence of a child that sees possibility in all things, that has the faith of a mustard seed. Looking back in hindsight, I wonder, what did a 14-year-old child know about hope? Where did a 14-year-old child sum up the courage to speak about hope in that dire situation? Then I realized it must have been a hand above her, a hand above all of us, that was leading her to her greater purpose, her greater being. That today it's no coincidence that she's standing in front of you all today, sharing her story about becoming a doctor, and now on quest to inspire hope and courage in the world. 2 years after my mother passed away, we migrated to Canada. in search for a better future like all immigrants. To my shock and surprise, we're living in the projects, not having so much inspiration around us, being exposed to drug addicts, sex workers. I had to dig deep within myself to rise above that. I had to dig deep within myself for inspiration. I remember growing up with kids who often were pregnant as teenagers, who had lost their way in school. And I had to make a conscious decision that I was not going to be the victim of my circumstances. I had to dig deeper within myself and rise above all that which I was seeing, all that which was surrounding me. So I worked hard at school and graduated with an A from high school and made it to McMaster University for a pre-med program. And around that time, I was part of Pathways to Education, which is a program that facilitates for kids coming from low-income families to transition well into college. Being in that program was a great privilege as it allowed me to have access to scholarships. And I was told that I couldn't apply for that scholarship because I'd only been in Canada for 1 year. The requirement was that you must have been in Canada for 4 years. So only having been in Canada for 1 year, I believed that somehow I'd get the scholarship. So I applied and went against all the words where I've been told that you have to have been in Canada for 4 years, and if you don't meet that requirement, you won't get it. And somehow I was granted that scholarship. One may wonder, why am I telling you this? Sometimes life will not make sense as you're walking through it. It will only make sense looking back. Now I realize that when you're grounded in your dream, and you believe in your dream, you're grounded in your purpose, there is something bigger than yourself, that hand that pulls you in the direction of your dreams. And when you choose that dream, no matter how many times you fall down, the universe will rise with you and help you achieve that dream, because all things are indeed possible when you believe, and when you believe in the beauty of your dreams.
All right, Dr. Thabo, thank you so much for joining me today. We appreciate you making the time to be with us. We know we're supposed to be with you in person. We still hope to do that. But in the meantime, obviously, because of COVID, we can only talk to you via Zoom, or not even Zoom, but via the virtual way. Tell the audience who you are and what you do.
Right. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Nothabo Ncube. Nothabo means mother, teacher of joy. And my second name, which is Guguletu, means our precious gift. I'm a medical doctor by profession, currently not practicing. I'm also an inspirational speaker, coach, and a mentor. I believe that I'm called to inspire hope, to empower humanity, and to raise consciousness for such a time as this.
So, Thabo, when you say you're a medical doctor, from day one when I met you, I had that question. So let me ask you this for people who are interested. How do you go from being a medical doctor to working in doing inspirational work? What got you to change, or what got you to sort of say, you know what, I'm going to do this. This is what I'm called for, and not do what you trained for years to do?
Right. Kizito, I'm sure you would understand, coming from Zimbabwe and also having been raised by African parents, I think becoming a medical doctor was the most logical career path for me to pursue. And both my parents were teachers, so they instilled in us the value of an education at a tender age. And unfortunately, my mother died in a tragic accident in 2003. And when she passed away, as I was watching her lie in her coffin, it felt right to make a promise to her. And really, the promise was my way of saying to her, though you're gone, I'll still continue on and make something great of my life. And I said, Mama, ngile Temba, which means, Mama, I'm hopeful. And I continued and said, I will try by all means. I'll try by all means, and I'll strive to be a doctor. So for me, becoming a medical doctor was more of a pledge and an honor to my mother's legacy. And when I finally, fulfilled that promise to her, and also fulfilling my lifelong dream, I noticed that I was still yearning and searching for more purpose, And, and then, becoming an inspirational speaker, coach, and mentor, felt like that was the right thing for me to do. That's what brought me joy. That's what made me happy. And just that natural ability to connect with the girl child and women in general. And allowing other people to see themselves in your pain, in your struggles, in your trauma, so that way they too are reminded that they have what it takes within them to turn around their struggles into something more and bigger than themselves. And for me, yeah, that I found that to be more of who I am, more of who I'm called to be, than the traditional practice of medicine.
And you're still doing the work as a healer, obviously, because this is like, I think to me, that's what we need more in the world today, more than ever. And one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you about inspiration, some of the inspiration work you do, but like little being optimistic during this time. What do you think people should do? People who are probably looking at things and losing hope in the world, losing hope in uh, their own life and what they're supposed to do. How do they go to becoming, or at least to finding that thing you call purpose? What should people do to get to that level, especially during this time?
Right. It's thank you so much for asking that question. And I always say to people that the COVID crisis is a gift to all of humanity. The COVID crisis has allowed all of us to take a pause, to reflect on ourselves individually and collectively as well. And for me, particularly, it has given me more clarity in terms of who I am and what I'm called to be. And in terms of what drives me, what pushes me forward in the midst of this crisis, and how do I find hope in such times? I think for me, Kizito, what drives me, it's looking at where we are as a people, and also looking at how far we still have to go, you know? And that's what gives me hope. And when I see a young girl who has big dreams, who has a vision, who wants to change and impact people's lives, it gives me more reason to continue on, because I know that there's somebody who's coming behind me, who's looking up to me, who's drawing in inspiration from me through the work that I'm doing. So that's what gives me hope. And that's what keeps me pushing forward, even during times when I honestly don't even know how things are going to fall into place. Especially right now with the numbers of COVID cases increasing, particularly here in Canada. It brought in a scare, for a minute. But I realized that COVID also serves a purpose in our lives. And if for so long it's here, it means that we are supposed to grow through the process. We're supposed to evolve through the process. So much of what I've been going through right now is really looking within myself and asking myself the big questions. What is this here to teach me? What is this here to teach us as a people? What purpose is the COVID supposed to serve in our lives? And for sure, it's serving a purpose. For me, it has given me more clarity as to the teacher that I'm called to be, the healer that I'm called to be, the speaker that I'm called to be, the coach that I'm supposed to be. And how do we continue forward? We continue forward by just pushing. You just push forward even when you don't know and understand how things will fall into place, but just believing in a higher power, which I call God, grace, divine intelligence, the universe, whatever you choose to call it. For me, I think the most important thing is to understand that this is part of a divine unfolding of a new earth, and we are all a part of it, and we're all supposed to serve in our own way, using our individuality to serve a purpose that is bigger than ourselves. So it is, for me, it gives me so much joy and hope to see you, a leader in the community, in Toronto, in Africa, and beyond, doing the work that you do. And that's what everybody should be doing. It doesn't have to be a big stage. It can be just in your community, and that's okay. It can be in your family. That's okay. Just start where you are with what you have. It's enough to change and impact the lives of the people around you.
And also, I think to me, one of the things I've probably noticed is the greatest awakenings, and we all have to go through an awakening in our life. Whether we acknowledge them or not is a different story. But most awakenings happen through turmoils and crises. And so, as you're saying, embracing that, facing that fear, and walking through it anyways, is really something that a lot of people need to pay attention to and really understand that 2020 as a year is a blessing if you want it that way, or it's gonna continue to be miserable if you focus on what's wrong, what's happening that is not obviously what we used to. So but I think more important than anything else really is voices like yours to remind people, because sometimes we are busy telling people, oh, development, work, but when somebody's not inspired, when somebody does not feel that fire burning inside them, you could hit that drum a million times and still nothing will happen. So having people like you on the ground, connecting to individuals, like that's why I wanted to bring you on, because I want people to know and to see the work that you do. We actually gonna play this. We are playing your TED talk before this interview today. So I just want people to see how people begin their journeys. It's not, you don't just wake up and there is a process to it, right?
Right. You don't just get there. That is true. And to just add on to what you said, Kizito, any great thing, any good thing is often preceded by chaos, by a mess. And driving that point home, my own personal journey, being 14 and looking at my mother in the midst of pain, in the midst of chaos, and then a promise was born. It is the promise that has served as a guiding light in my journey. And that has allowed me not only to fulfill that promise to my mother, but also to unfold a higher purpose of using my voice and my story to impact hope. And that's what it's about. We all have so much power to tap into our pain and create something more valuable, not only for our lives, but for also other people's lives, the lives that are connected to our voices, the lives that are connected to our impact, the lives that are connected to our stories. So if we can all individually stand in our true authentic voices, stand in the truth of who we are, of who we're called to be, can you imagine how much light we'll give to each and every life on Mother Earth? And
We
really,
will
what
change.
truly matters is us being able to channel that power in a positive way, so that way we can be of positive impact to other people's lives.
And I think also, right, the work that involves to get to that point, maybe you can chime in and like, I think some of the things, like when we think of meditation, when you think of reading, like picking up books and reading and like sort of finding your true self or your true, I call it the true East. People say your true North. I call it the true East. But like getting to that point as an individual is a lot of work that people are not willing to do.
Right, right. And when you speak about the work that we have to do, um, like meditation, and some people, call it prayer. I think it's important that through meditation and through prayer, you gain clarity on who you are. You hear the voice of God, the voice of spirit, the energy of your being speaking to you and reminding you of that which you are. And that is key. And once you hear that voice clearly, it is key that you align yourself with that voice. So for you, Kizito, I'm sure that you also had a defining moment in your journey when you came to the light of who you are. And then from that moment on, everything that you did was in sync and in alignment with what you knew to be true about yourself. And it doesn't mean, I know that you've been on this journey for years. It doesn't mean that you get to this defining moment overnight. No, it's a process. It takes work. And even along the way, along the journey, you need to surround yourself with the right people. People are going to feed into you. People who are going to nurture your gifts, who are going to nurture your talents. People are going to believe in you. Sometimes that's all that you need. Somebody who's going to hold your hand and say to you, I see you. I'm standing with you, and I know there is something in you. And that's all that we need. So it's very important that we align ourselves with the right people along the way. And for me, one of the programs that truly shaped my path, my trajectory, was Pathways to Education. This is a program that caters to kids who are coming from low-income families. I come from Region Park community. So coming in alignment with Pathways to Education was my saving grace. This was a program that provided me with a tutor, with the mentor, with the support system that I needed. And that program gave me hope. So along the way, when you make that decision to pursue that which you believe you're called to be, the universe is going to align you with the right people, the right opportunities to help you unfold that path. So it's just to remind anybody who's tuning in, who's listening in, you are never alone. It may seem sometimes as though you are alone, but you are supported by a bigger hand, by a bigger force that transcends your understanding. There are certain things that I could have not possibly prayed into being, but just through alignment and me following my voice and me trusting my path, there are people that have come my way. There are programs that have that I've been introduced to that have catapulted me from where I was before to where I am now. So you're never alone. You're supported, and it's for you again to also understand when the universe is guiding you and directing you, and to stay the course, to stay on the path, and eventually things will come together for you.
And and I know, so let me maybe even challenge you on this, because you as a speaker, right? Most of your work is usually involves traveling. Obviously, during COVID, you can't travel anymore. How has that? I guess it's not a challenge; it's more. I'm curious to know how has that been for you and maybe your industry as speakers during COVID? How are you able to actually function during COVID since you are not able to travel anymore? Like, is there ways? Have you figured out a way for people to do speeches online? How is the industry doing?
Right, things of course took a different turn, especially as from March, I would say as from March 2020. I actually had a couple of speaking engagements, two in South Africa in May, and one in the UK and another one in the US, and all of them were cancelled. And these were big speaking opportunities. So I was definitely affected, just like a lot of people. And I think one of the most beautiful things that happened, it was 2 weeks ago, I received an email from one of the speakers' viewers that I'm a part of, and they were asking me for my rate for obviously speaking engagements online through Zoom, through digital media. And that gave me hope. That gave me inspiration that things are shifting and everybody's coming to recognize that even though you're doing a speaking engagement through digital media, you still deserve to be paid. Because that was another fear that I had. Eventually, when that happened, nobody was willing to pay you if you're not showing up in person. So it meant that things were going to be tough for a period of time. But I feel that there's a shift that's happening right now where people are now even opening themselves up to paying speakers, even though they're doing it online. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. There's so many challenges that we're going to continue experiencing, of course, but I can see that things are shifting for the better. So it's just for me to continue on the path and to trust that things will continue getting better with time.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, and this is to you, to anyone else. 2020 is that challenge, but everything you want to do, everything you wanted to do is still here. I think obviously people need to figure out how to work with the virtual systems for now, but next year, a year from now, we won't forget about 2020, but we will just look at it like we look at anything else. So, but I was just curious to know, but maybe more so to find out. What are other programs? What are other things have you been able to look at maybe and say, you know what, this is what I want to add to some of my work that maybe you want people to know about?
Right. So one of the things that I have, Kizito, is a young women's mentorship program. The name of the foundation is called Esther. Esther from the Bible. I love her story, how she came from a poor family and emerged as a queen for her time, and did a lot of good work changing and impacting people's lives. So the intention of the program is to raise the next generation of African female leaders, and it's been such a privilege being able to travel back home to Zimbabwe. I've also been to Kenya, and I've also been to South Africa. I'm just mentioning the countries in Africa.
We need to see you in
And one of the
Kigali soon.
things, say that again.
We need to see you in Kigali soon as well.
Oh, yes. I'll be waiting for that invitation. So,
All right.
yeah, and for me, it's just been, it was a privilege being able to meet these young girls, young women who have so much drive, who have so much potential, who are very smart, who are gifted, but they don't necessarily have the means and the resources and the tools to help them get to where they want to be. And I kept asking myself, then how do I best serve them? How do I close the gap so that way I can also give them an opportunity, just like somebody else gave me an opportunity. And I know for sure that just being in Canada for me was obviously an opportunity of a lifetime. Being here afforded me with the opportunities that I've had already. And as I continue on the path, I know that I wouldn't be the woman that I am if it wasn't for some of the opportunities that Canada has given me. And I believe that when you make it through the door as a leader, it is your duty to look back at those who are coming after you and hold their hand so that way they can make it through as well. It's not enough for you to make it through the door. You have to look back and pull the ones who are coming after you up. And that's why we do what we do, really. So that way we can have more people, create more leaders, and so that way we can continue on and doing good work. I cannot do it alone. Kizito, you cannot do it alone. So we all have to come together and contribute to humanity in the best way that we can. So the Esther Foundation, that's one of its goals, is to be able to raise the next generation of African female leaders and giving them the resources, the tools that they need, so that way they can bring those dreams, they can bring those visions to life.
Okay, and maybe since you talked about raising the next female leaders, I want to ask you a question that I always ask, and I really, for me, it's important, and I think it should be important for everybody, especially brothers around the world. What do you think is the state or the condition of women in general, and how far do you think we need to go to be where we should be for our sisters? Because I think we've been fighting this fight of making sure that there is equality, but it remains a fight. How far do you think we still have to go to achieve that victory so we have an actual family that's standing together and that's ready to tackle the challenges together, as opposed to now we gotta worry about the fight among our own.
Right. First I would say we've come a long way. My grandmother was married into a polygamous home. My grandfather had a lot of cows, and in Africa, that's considered rich. So that afforded him, of course, because of the patriarchy system as well, that afforded him the opportunity of having two wives. Now, I don't know. I never got to have this conversation with her, but I do know and suspect that she got married into that kind of setup, mainly because she was not empowered herself and she couldn't take care of herself, because the other woman came in after her, but she felt stuck. She couldn't leave. So one of the things that I have learned over time, and just seeing actually from even my mother's generation was slightly different. My mother was a teacher by profession. And at the time she passed away, she was already a school principal actually in Zimbabwe. And one of the things that I believe my mother had access to was the gift of an education. It is an education that gave her the power to make decisions and choices for herself, right? So this is not to say, a polygamous home, there's anything wrong with it. It boils down to you as an individual. But I think the most important thing is to give a woman, a girl child, the gift of choice, the power of choice. And so if somebody is choosing a certain is making a choice because of their inability to take care of themselves, then we have a problem. So I can make the difference. I can see the difference between my grandmother's generation and my mother's generation, and now even to my generation. The things that I'm doing now, Kizito, as far as speaking is concerned, taking on a leadership role in community, to the world at large. This is an opportunity that my mother never had. And I don't believe she thought it was possible for a girl child like me coming from Zimbabwe to be on these different platforms and different stages doing the work that I'm passionate about. So we've come a long way. We still are not where we want to be, but definitely things have changed for the girl child and women. And right now, currently, we have Kamala Harris, who is the vice president to Joe
Nominee.
Biden.
Yeah.
Yes, nominee. Yes, nominee.
Yeah.
Yes. And, so that shows us that we've come a long way, whether or not she makes it. But I think for me, it's a message to the girl child more than anything as to what is possible when you believe in yourself, and also to the time that we're living in now. So we definitely have been pushing the conversation forward, and the narrative is shifting for the girl child and women. We are now having access to opportunities that our grandmothers or our mothers never had. And I don't believe they thought it was even possible to experience everything that is happening, especially as it pertains to the opportunities that the girl child and women are having access to.
See, I should be asking you these questions because I know from your being optimistic as you are, your answers are always looking at it from like, okay, this is where we are, but it's getting better. And you're right, you're definitely right. Because for me, I'm always looking at it from how come we're still here. But you're right, nothing happens at once. Looking at
Yeah,
it from
it's
the
a
examples
process.
you're
It
giving,
takes time.
yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe we need to look at it, if we look at it country per country, we can see different things. But just using your own example, it shows that progress that is required in
Yeah,
order for us to get to where we need to be. Dr. Ntabo, I'm going
right.
to
And
ask you.
Kizito,
Yeah.
even for you just made a comment on my story, and I can tell you this. Even for me, when I started out on my journey, I moved to Canada in 2006. And at the time, really, my goal was to become a medical doctor. That's all that I thought was possible for myself.
Yeah.
And, I didn't struggle with believing that was possible for myself because I came from an academic home, from a very academic home. But I would have never imagined that a girl child like me from Zimbabwe would be doing the work that I'm doing now. Never. So
Yeah.
that alone shows us that there's a shift that has happened in the
Mm,
consciousness of women, in the consciousness
mm,
of the girl child. We're coming to
mm,
understand ourselves differently. And we've been
mm,
given the power and the space, the room to actually be able to surrender to that which we desire for ourselves. Because
mm,
a lot of, even when I started out on this path in terms of the shift from medicine into the work that I'm doing, most of my friends who are in Zimbabwe didn't believe that I was going to be doing what I'm doing. Because for a
mm.
Zimbabwean girl child, it's not possible for somebody to be able to make a lucrative um, to create something
To
lucrative
make a
out of
living
speaking,
even
coaching.
as a speaker, yeah. Plus, not only that,
Exactly.
you're forgetting you're not just anybody. You're somebody who have just graduated. You have a doctorate. You're supposed to be rich, making your money as a doctor. You're choosing to like put that on the side and focus on what purpose? Who, you know what I mean? I think that's what everybody's thinking. Is like, what are you doing? Not like you're supposed to do this. And I think for many of us, yes, it's about status, but it's also about money.
Mhm.
Most doctors, especially here, make a very good living. So why are you going into like speaking and stuff? You should just be a doctor and be respected in the community. That's what everybody's gonna be thinking.
Yeah, and that's not right. And yes,
Yeah.
and so I went through a lot of that. There's so many negative voices, naysayers, you name it, who are
Mm,
questioning my decision. But as you already know this, purpose
mm,
chooses you. Your calling
mm,
chooses you.
mm.
it chooses you. And for me, much of my struggles and my trauma and the pain that I've had to go through was connected to the purpose that I'm living now. But I didn't see through it this way at the time that I was going through so many different challenges earlier on in my journey. Just from even 2011, when I was just starting medical school, when I sent my story to Oprah Winfrey. I sent my story to Oprah Winfrey because I needed money to go to school. That was what I was looking for. Of course, I didn't get any money, from her. What I received was an opportunity to be part of a live class on You Become What You Believe. But just being part of the Oprah Winfrey live class changed my life. That was the moment for me, being an African girl child, being in that room, listening to the story of the phenomenal Oprah Winfrey, and other women were in the room that day, just them sharing their stories about how they were able to turn around their pain into purpose and their struggles into strength. That was a reminder to me that I too am possible, that I too can turn my life around. But it took me trusting my path and me being able to explore the opportunities that life was giving me, that I came to a place of actually recognizing who I am. And this goes on to show that there are no coincidences in life. Everything that is happening to you is happening for you in the grand scheme of life. My lack of money to go to medical school led me to one of the biggest classrooms in the world, which is Oprah Winfrey's live class, right? And that live class deposited a seed, reignited a seed of purpose and of destiny in me. So even when the other voices, the naysayers, the negative voices, when people started speaking, why are you taking on this path? I knew in my heart of hearts, Kizito, that being part of that life class was destiny. Because what led me even to Oprah Winfrey's life class was my need for money to go to school. And I didn't get any money, but instead was invited to be part of that live class. And that's how life unfolds. It's very dynamic, very complex, very vast. But it's for you to be able to receive everything that life throws your way and be able to learn from each and every encounter, from each and every experience, trusting that all of it is part of the divine unfolding of your journey. And it's for you to listen, to always say, what is this here to teach me? What purpose is this serving in my unique journey, in my individuality? And to stop, to refrain from doing things like how everybody else is doing it, and to do it your own way, your own unique way. And as you surrender to that, which is your purpose, that which you believe to be your purpose, life is going to continue putting you and positioning you in rooms like that. And take heed and run with it. It doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. There are going to be times when you're going to stumble. There are going to be times when you're going to struggle with even seeing the light. But if you continue on and you believe that the same hand that brought you into being, into Mother Earth, is the same hand that is going to carry you forward, you know that things will be okay. I can guarantee you that. I'm not in any way special than anybody else. I'm just a girl who was willing to believe in herself and who had a daring spirit, who was willing to also explore that which I believed was meant for me.
Yeah. And I think the key word you put in there is belief. I think when you know, once you realize this is what I'm meant to do, the only thing you got to look out for is almost like synchronicities. Look for signs of, okay, if you don't see signs of whether it's difficulties or not, there is always these familiarities. There is these things that you meet along the way. And this happens to me every day. Sometimes I'm like, yo, is this happening? But you get to a place where you realize you're not even in control anymore. It's almost like you're on automatic. And through challenges, there is always this message, this voice. And all you gotta do is just believe that this is the journey that is meant for you. And I think that part is what I would like to talk to people who probably haven't discovered their purpose. That part doesn't come until you walk through that space that I talked about, the scary space, the space that you don't want to walk into because you're scared that when you get to
Yes.
the other side, there might be nothing to hold you, so you're gonna fall, right?
Yes.
Like you picking
Yes. I
up
love the
that,
way you
making
put
that
it.
decision. Yeah.
Yep. The synchronicities, and they're always there. But like you're saying, you only get to experience them when you allow yourself to
On
walk
the other
through.
side. Yeah.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
call it the uncomfortable path, you know,
Mm.
because it is uncomfortable and it's not for the faint-hearted. But you know, once you surrender to it and you trust it, you begin to experience so many synchronicities, and everything will start to make sense. Everything will just click. And for me, that's what keeps me going, you know.
Yeah.
That's what
Thabo,
keeps
I
me
was
going, just seeing all the signs and whispers guiding me, and
yeah.
connecting the dots along the way, and just that knowing that I'm being guided, because we all are guided. The difference is that, Kizito, you are now aware of those signs, you are aware of those synchronicities, but this has been always been happening to each and every one of us ever since we
Yeah.
were born. I'll tell you, even just looking at my path right from when I was in Zimbabwe. I was a deputy head girl in boarding school. You know, always teachers would give me a leadership role, whether it was group leader, whether it was the sports captain, whether it was deputy head girl. I was always that child who was called into those positions. But at the time, I wasn't paying attention to it, of course. It meant
Mm.
nothing to me. And now,
Mm.
because I'm aware, because I've experienced that shift, in my
Mm.
awareness, I now know
Yeah.
that that was never a coincidence, that those were whispers and signs guiding me, calling me home to my true self, to my true nature, which is
Yeah.
serving the community, right? But I wasn't
Preparing
paying
you.
attention. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then even when I'm, you know, moving to Canada, living in community housing, I always say to people that was one of my greatest gifts, just
Mm.
being in community housing, because if it wasn't for living in that catchment area, I would have never known about pathways to education. Speaking of
Mm.
that, now, you know, they're huge. They're impacting youth life all over Canada. It's a nationwide
Yeah.
program, but they also now have made me their ambassador. So that way I can
Okay.
advocate for youth all over Canada. But all these
Okay.
things, it's divinity in motion, the synchronicities
Mm.
that you're talking about. I came to know
Yeah.
them 2006 when I just arrived in Canada, but I didn't know that they were going to blossom into everything that they are now. And I
Yeah.
didn't know that pathways to education's goal and my life's purpose were also in sync, in the light of, you know, just advocating for youth and empowering you
Yeah.
through the gift of an education. I didn't know all these things. So your life, you're being guided. Nothing is ever a coincidence. Everything that's happening to you, bad and good, is part of the divine unfolding of who you're supposed to be, of who you're
Mm.
called to be. It's for you
Yeah.
now to listen, to
Yeah.
listen,
And to
and to
believe
trust
that,
the
because I
voice that comes.
yeah. Yeah, because I think, and
Yeah.
this is more a spiritual thing and less of a religious thing, and this is why for me I shy away from discussing religious topics. But when it comes to spirituality, meaning who we are, all of us are spiritual beings. There's
Hmm.
just a level we have to get to. You know, we all believe, we all trust, right? This is faith.
Hmm.
All of these are things that we have. We just, the question is, are we using these tools? And I think when it comes to like finding your purpose and following your purpose and serving your purpose, it's all about believing that I'm here to do this, believing that the universe and the the creator, or whatever you want to say, God, has this for me. This is what is meant for me to do. And once you take that on, the world changes. And I think, for if anybody can get anything from this conversation between you and I today, is find that thing. And I've never seen anybody who says I know my purpose and regret following that. You know what I mean? Like, I've never met
Hmm.
one person. I've met a lot of people who do things in life and they're like, oh, I regret, I should have done it. But you never see anybody who live their purpose who go on their deathbed and say, you know what, I should have done
Yeah.
that instead. Never, never. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so find that and just live a life and change lives and and be true to your essence, be true to your soul, be true to who you are. I think that's the message that if anybody listens to you, because you and I have had a lot of conversations, and obviously seeing some of the work you do, that's one thing that you always remind me. You tell me too sometimes. You're like, yeah, Kizito, this and this, and so I really appreciate that. I think people need to get that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And that is very true, Kizito. You said it all. And there's so much power in us operating from a place of purpose. The key is for us to be in alignment with who we are, and that's it.
Mm, absolutely.
Just
So and
just
now
that
let me make,
alone.
yeah. That's it. I mean, that's true. That's nature. That's all there is. If you are look throughout, everything is what it is. It's just humans are the only ones that are sort of like you need like a shock. That's what we're talking about, an awakening. You need something to shock you, to remind you that, oh wait, I'm not here just to do whatever. I have purpose. And sometimes we do. Sometimes we live life. We never really recognize that that's what we're here to do. Thabo, we can talk forever, but maybe let me just ask you, what are the things that you're looking to do going forward that maybe you want people to know about in the near future?
In the near future, I think I want to just continue on the path, just advocating for youth in Africa
Mm,
specifically,
mm,
giving them a voice and creating a space a healthy space, where they can bring their dreams to life, and then also to launch a platform. I think I've shared this with you before. Just a platform where we can all come together, share our voices, share our stories with the
mm.
intention and purpose of healing other people's lives. I do believe that there's so much power in storytelling. There's so much power in allowing another person to see who we are at our core, in terms of allowing another person to see our pain, to see our trauma, to see our struggles, because it is through that they too in turn um, can see through the traumas that they've gone through in a different light. If 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 I never had the gift of listening to other women's stories, I wouldn't have been able to turn my own circumstances around. So, that's something that I want to do as well for other people, to create a shift in other people's lives. So that way they can make something great and something meaningful of their lives as well. That's where I see myself.
All right, and where do people find your work? I know there is drtalbot.com. Where else do people find you, social media or different platforms?
So currently on Facebook, I do go by Dr. Talbot, DrThabo, and Instagram, Dr. Talbot, DrThabo, and on Twitter as well, DrThabo _, and on my website, www.drtalbot.com.
All right, thank you so much. And for anyone who is watching, guys, if you need somebody to speak at your platform anywhere, if you can travel, obviously COVID, hopefully it's then soon. If you need anyone to inspire you, reach out to Dr. Thabo. And of course, for us, Dr. Thabo, we really look forward to working with you down the road. Obviously, we know the platform you just mentioned is something we would really look to, because we really want to have more, engage more African Canadian leaders, people who have different platforms. So please do keep us informed when that is up, and when it's ready, we can obviously send people to you in terms of people who are looking to listen and to learn more about that. But also, we want to just also see a way we can collaborate, make sure that these kind of stories are out there by us, by African Canadians who have the experience that we have. Because I feel like that's really the piece that's missing for our people, is seeing successful people that we can learn from, that are also from our background. So thank you so much for joining us once again, and we look forward to seeing more to come from you.
Thank you so much for having me, Kizito.
Appreciate it.